the accused, I should say, cooperating with this investigation?
Well, at this point, let me just say we are relieved. It's been a very sleepless couple of days. And I think that yes, we do have the suspect in custody. But I think what's most important is from the very moment this began, there was a level of cooperation and coordination among law enforcement officials that I've never seen. And this is a model for how it should be done, not just in Utah, but across the nation. Literally, we have our county sheriff, our county prosecutor, the state level. And literally from the moment this happened, I was on with the governor, who was on with the president. We're working with DOJ. I mean, this is a model for how these kinds of things should be conducted, what should take place. And so I think that coordination was very helpful. And we had 7,000 to 8,000 different tips that came in, because the reality is, I mean, there's 3.5 million people in Utah. It's a large state, but the reality is when 3,000 people are at an event and they witness this kind of thing take place, it's personal. Everybody knows somebody who was there. I have close family members who were there. I have staff members who were there. I heard about it first from close family members before the media or the law enforcement was even reporting it. And so really what we're trying to do now is, as law enforcement, we're going to, press charges and take this as far as we can from a legal standpoint, make sure that justice is done. But I think it's also important, as Governor Cox mentioned today, that we don't just dial down the rhetoric, but we really learn how we can be unified as a people, what we can do to come together.
Yeah, well, that is something that a lot of people feel is a great challenge for this country right now, Attorney General. I want to ask you about the investigation itself and what you have yet to learn. 11,000 leads, we understand, according to the FBI, to chase down at this point. Governor Cox spoke briefly about the way this unfolded with the suspect's roommate. Let's listen.
The content of these messages included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler, stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in a towel. The messages also refer to engraving bullets and a mention of a scope and the rifle being unique.
Attorney General, with the roommate in mind, with 11,000 leads in mind, are you going to be looking for collaborators or other folks who may have worked with the suspect?
Absolutely. We're looking for everything. At this point, the information we have is still fairly limited. So we have someone in custody. And what we're now doing, we have a probable cause statement that you've seen. Within the next couple of days, we're looking at Tuesday, there will be charging documents filed. But the real task right now is to piece through this information, get things like what was said on the phone, what was texted, whatever information we can. And then that will help us in the upcoming prosecution. And then we will work as well with the feds. And so this will be a collaborative effort between the two to make sure that this individual is brought to justice.
Do we know who bought the gun yet? Do we know where he got it?
Those are pieces we don't know, but I can assure you that no stone will be left unturned here in the state of Utah as we do everything we can to make sure that he is held accountable.
One of the more remarkable parts of this 24-hour period is learning the suspect essentially turned himself in, spurred on by his father. Have you spoken with this young man's dad?
I have not, but that is one of the things that makes this interesting. And I think as things progressed, I think people, including his father, realized that this is, that we were getting closer and closer, and we were going to get him. And I'm glad that we got him, because what this does now is speaking from on a personal note and knowing so many people who were there, there's a catharsis as well. I mean, my job as Attorney General is to make sure that justice is served, but there's also a corresponding need for our community to feel a catharsis and a healing from the situation. And so, I mean, I literally, after spending hours on with law enforcement right after this happened, middle of the night before I went to sleep, my last call was to a family member who was there and was processing the trauma and grief of what he had experienced and what it was like to be barricaded in the classroom, not knowing what was going on outside. And so those are the kinds of things that we need to process and heal as a state. And I'm confident that this will be an opportunity to bring us together. And as law enforcement, we'll make sure that the right thing happens.
I'm just curious, before I ask you about the charges here, when his father brought him to talk to the minister, did he know the minister was on the task force? Did he intend to turn his son in? I don't know if this is a Mormon family or otherwise. Could they have been going to pray together, or was that in fact the plan?
That's a good question. I don't have that information, and I need to be cautious because I'm, as someone who's working with the prosecution, I mean, you're asking the right questions, but also I need to be careful not to prejudice that. But you're right, that does make it a really interesting factor in terms of how this person was turned over, because that's not something that you generally hear, and you would expect something like this to end with a standoff, and in fact, it was just the opposite.
President wants the death penalty, Attorney General. Will charges be filed here only on the state level, or the federal level, or both?
Well, right now we will be working in coordination with the feds, and we've been discussing the different options. Well, a lot of what takes place now is the fact finding and figuring out what facts we have at our disposal. And then a lot of those facts, as we get them, and we're still getting them, as you know, at this moment, that will have a huge part to play in what charges are brought. I mean, obviously, in the probable cause statement, there are things like aggravated murder and obstruction of justice. But we anticipate that when we have more information in the next couple of days, that'll help us round things out. And then the charging statement will be filed most likely next Tuesday. And at that point in time, we'll have a much better sense of where the charges are and what we'll be doing going forward. And then that will also answer the question in terms of the federal and state interplay. But I can assure you there's been a very high level of coordination. And, you know, I'm thrilled with the way that our county prosecutors like Jeff Gray have done a good job of handling what needs to be done here and working with so many different levels of law enforcement, because that's in a very complicated situation like this, that is the solution, and that's how we get someone here.
Well, as the top law enforcement officer in the state of Utah, do you support that idea of pursuing the death penalty, considering he turned himself in?
Well, at this point, I can't say because we don't know all the information yet. And so this is absolutely something we'll be discussing. You can count on the fact that this will be a topic of conversation. But, you know, simply because I am part of the process, it's not something I'm going to opine on. But it's definitely something that is being discussed. I can assure you that.